Locked On Canadiens, a very special mailbag where we talk about should the Canadiens trade up in the NHL draft.
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everybody, and welcome to episode 1062. And today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go, because we got to talk more about Monopoly Go. This fast-paced game lets you team up with friends for tournaments to unlock awesome prizes like unique stickers for trading, cool playing pieces, and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends. I do love to taunt my friends. So download Monopoly Go now, free on Google Play or the App Store. My name is Laura Saab, also known as The Active Stick, and I'm joined as always by the wonderful Scott Matla of Habs Eyes on the Prize and our very wonderful friend Ian Boisvert of The Bill. Gentlemen, Scott, how are you doing today? Are you ready to welcome our guest for our mailbag?
I am. I was very excited about this because it was either we did a very special mailbag or I spent the entire show talking about how Kendrick Lamar turned Drake into smoldering ash on Tuesday. And at the risk of copyrights and whatnot, we opted to not do that. But maybe we'll bring it up in a live stream again at some point in the future.
Speaking of live streams, not lime streams. I don't know why.
You're a lime now.
Cool. Live streams. We will be having some more as the course of the off season takes place. But I want to welcome Ian, our good friend. He's basically our part of our show at this point. Locked On Canadiens Extended Universe, he calls it. Ian, how are you doing? And are you ready for me to grill you about some things?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm very, very excited. I like coming on for these mailbag episodes.
I absolutely adore when you come around because you always have some fun insight to bring. And also when I'm here, it doesn't devolve into my two large sons acting up when I'm not around. I know Scott is like, I'm catching strays. Listen, I have listened to the episodes when I have not been here and you two have recorded without me.
We only talked about ballpark food once.
Yeah,
okay?
one time.
Like
for 20 minutes.
One time. All right. So, Ian, I am going to ask you the same thing that we talked about yesterday. Which of the Brendan Gallagher or the Josh Anderson contract would you most like the Canadiens to get off the books? And how much are you willing to give up to do it?
Yeah, it's a tricky question because, I mean, they're looking at them on cap friendly. They're separated by $1 million. Gallagher at 6.5 on a cap hit. Josh Anderson at 5.5. They both expire at the same time, but Gallagher's got 2 years on Josh Anderson. Sorry. So, I mean, I think I try to move Josh Anderson and keep Brendan Gallagher. And the reason for that is the Brendan Gallagher we have now is probably the Brendan Gallagher we're going to have towards the end of that contract, right? Like he has kind of evolved his game into a lower six role. Is he paid too much? Absolutely. This was, there's different kinds of contracts in the NHL. There's the, we're going to overpay for you now, so we have you, at a lower number later, or we're underpaying you now, and now you've come up for your contract and you're 28 years old, and now I need to throw all of that other money at you that I didn't pay last time because now you're worth a whole bunch more because you have a lot of, you played really well under that. That's the contract that Gallagher is on right now. And I like bottom six Gallagher. Like I think he's a good guy to have in that room. He's not going to score 30 goals again. Like he's not going to do that sort of thing. But Josh Anderson, if he stays at this level, like of course he can rebound, right? Like I don't take that away from him. But I am worried that this is kind of just it. Like when Gallagher bottoms out, he's still a pretty effective forward. When Josh Anderson bottoms out, he's not playable. Like that's the difference between the two in my mind. So I'm keeping Gallagher, and to get rid of Anderson, I mean, I'm not in a terrible hurry right now because the Canadiens, they're not going to spend a ton in free agency this year unless they want to throw a bunch of money at Jonathan Marchessault for some reason. So I would try to hold on to him and see if he recoups any of that value. But I'm not throwing a first round pick out the window, I don't think, to get rid of Josh Anderson. I want to use that ammo to make the team better, not remove a net negative.
And that's really interesting because yesterday we kind of had differing opinions, and Scott would have been willing to give up that first rounder for
Yeah.
Josh Anderson, but also I feel like when we were talking, it was like, how do we get rid of the contract as soon as possible? Whereas, like from my perspective, it was a Brendan Gallagher that I would have wanted to let go of, and this is a little bit controversial, but I was willing to go as high as Sean Farrell.
Wow.
So I have some strong feelings. And I understand that there's like a little bit of irrationality to my opinion on that, but I do feel that if the Canadians, let's say 2 years from now, they're getting close to either making the playoffs or challenging or something like that, and they do need to improve their team, like I do think that at that point there'd be so little left on the contract that you wouldn't have to give up that much, but you're
Yeah.
still going to have to give something up. Like that's the thing. There does have to be a prize that goes with the contract.
Yeah, they're not dumping this for nothing. Either of them. No matter how effective I think Gallagher can be, that contract is not good.
No, and the thing about Brendan Gallagher right now is that he got paid, admittedly, for something that he, had done a lot in the past. He was arguably one of the Canadiens' most consistent and useful forwards in a time when they did not have a lot of that, minus Thomas Buchanan and Max Pacioretty. And he got admittedly paid for that. That is a very good thing. And I'm just looking at the buyout for Josh Anderson. And it's not great because it lasts for 6 years. And it's 1.7222 repeating against the cap that he would earn, saving the Canadiens 5.2 next year, 3.2, 1.7, but then costing them 1.7 in the final couple of years. Cap hit of under just over 200,000, then 2.2, 3.7, 1.7, 1.7, 1.7. When you're a team trying to build for a contention window, you don't want that just sitting on your cap either. And I haven't looked at Gallagher's, and I'm a little afraid to in here right now. It's just as bad. The Canadiens save his also lasts for 6 years. No cap hit to the Canadiens actually saves them money next year if they were to buy him out. But then 2.1 against the cap, 4.6 against the cap, 2.1, 2.1, 2.1 through the rest of that for 6 years. And it doesn't really save the Canadiens all that much in terms. It saves them in the first couple years because he has a signing bonus, or it looks like a cap hit initial base salary, the way it was spread out in there. And I just think that Gallagher, his game is a little bit more simplistic. It doesn't rely on physical gifts. And as we've seen with, players who play with speed or pace or physicality as they get older and that slows down, they become less and less effective. And we've seen Josh Anderson be less and less effective without that part in there. The longevity in Gallagher's game, I think, is more valuable. And I think that there's definitely a GM or potential GM out there in the next couple of years, or even this year, who's going to look at Josh Anderson and be like, I can fix him.
Yeah.
And I am apt. And it's funny is that we're going to talk about this later in the show with Dubois and stuff. And I go, there's an assistant to one of those GMs out in LA right now that I think could definitely think that he is that guy.
Yeah.
That could fix him.
I can fix him. No, sweetie, you can't. You can't fix him. I promise you.
And that goes for hockey and also for life. Real quick, we've got about a minute left in this segment. Do you think that Josh Anderson's game can recover in any measure? I know we can't get back to, 2022 Josh Anderson, but do we think he can recover in any measure?
Yeah, I think so. I think earlier on in the season, he was getting good looks. He was getting really good chances, and he was just almost Bork. Remember, Rennie Bork couldn't. He was doing everything he could, and the puck wasn't going in the net. And then that kind of just spiraled, and it became mental at that point. Like it was between the ears. So I think he can regain it if the puck just starts to bounce his way a little bit, and he puts in the same level of, play that we know he can play. I do think that there's a good chance he bounces back from this.
And I did mean 2021. I always confuse. It's like 2022 was when they got Slavkovsky. 2021 is when they went to the Stanley Cup.
He wasn't even bad in the 2022 year. Like he scored 20-something goals before Sergachev threw him into a goalpost. Like it's if he can get back to the biggest thing is that play to your strengths, Josh. You do not need to cut across net. You are not a finesse player. Again, you are a 69 nice Mustang. You are not a Porsche. And I mean that in the kindest way possible. Stick with the raw power game. That's what you're made for. Leave the finesse things to Suzuki and to Caulfield and the like. You just focus on, you push that defense back and you open up those lanes and you just rip the puck. That is your strength. Stop not doing that.
Stop not doing that. I love it. All right. It is now time for our mailbag, and that is coming up next. But first, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It is winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL because it's the playoffs. And FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That is $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Honestly, like the NHL playoffs are my favorite time of year. A lot of times you'll find me not enjoying the weather outside. I will be inside watching the games, and now I can bet on who I think will win the Stanley Cup. I am honestly I'm still thinking about the Avs right now. And if you're interested as well, you can visit fanduel.com/locked on and make every playoff shot count. That is fanduel.com/locked on. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, we are getting into our mailbag with our lovely and talented guest, Ian Boisvert of The Build. Subscribe to The Build, everybody. And I think I'm going to start with a question. Oh, there's a couple of them that I find really, really interesting. Maybe we'll go over to the YouTube and start with that for the mailbag. I'm so sorry. I had saved this and now I have to go all the way back. All right, this comes from Paul G. For the mailbag, given the Winnipeg pick is now in early 20s, any chance the Habs can package both their picks and trade up with Anaheim or Chicago to get Lindstrom or Demidov? Both these teams need a stud defenseman and can get one at 5 and a good player at 27. So let's talk about Winnipeg first. Unceremoniously dumped from the playoffs. Think they were a paper tiger all along, as Scott multiple times predicted. If Connor Hellebuck, isn't what we're used to, then the Jets are in trouble. And unfortunately, because I love Tyler Toffoli, I love Sean Monahan, I do not love the coward Mark Scheifele. Scott, you turned out to be right.
Wow. Shocking that predicting that maybe Connor Hellebuck giving up 6 goals in the first game and only winning because Alexander Georgiev played the worst playoff game I've ever seen was correct, because Connor Hellebuck then continued to give up goals and Colorado did not, which is, anyways, not to, I'm just going to do one of these. I don't have a horn to toot, but beep, beep in regards to that. If only we all saw this coming. Welcome to your Michel Terry and Carey Price era, by the way, that if Connor Hellebuck is not lights out, you lose, and it sucks. I don't feel bad because we have your pick. In terms of moving up, depending on who you ask, the Canadiens have interest in Ivan Demidov and are very intrigued by that. I think that was in the Basu and Godin notebook as part of that they have a lot of interest in that player. Moving up with Chicago is going to probably require a lot more than 5 and 24 because it is Chicago who is going to take as many value picks as they can get. And I wouldn't be shocked if they just picked a defenseman 2nd overall anyways, that you wouldn't probably have to trade up for. Being in that top 5, you're getting someone quality regardless, and wait to see where everything shakes out. Because if you move up, do not trade anything. Stick with what you have right now. I believe the Winnipeg pick can be as low as 24th, if I have my thoughts correct in this. So I would... Personally, I'm not crazy about trading up for it, unless you're going to trade with Anaheim to get like Trevor Zegras or Troy Terry or somebody from them. But I don't think they're going to trade the Winnipeg pick just to move up. I think they'll trade it for an actual current player right now.
Yeah, I'm fully in agreement with that. I think I do think that Chicago is probably primed to take a defenseman here, and that probably helps the Canadiens. I think the Ducks are probably also primed to take a defenseman here, which just
The
leaves
Ducks are
Columbus
always
in
doing
front of the.
things they can't explain, though. Like,
That's true. I mean, Pat Verbeek marches to the beat of his own drum. We've kind of noticed that already. Um, and I don't know that they're perfectly thrilled with their forward situation either, but they don't, they have some intriguing defensive prospects, but I think that like a team like them would really, really like a number one defenseman. And this is how you get them, is by picking really high on the draft. Um, I do think that there's a chance that Demidov falls to the Canadians. I don't know what the Columbus Blue Jackets don't have a GM at the moment, so it's like almost impossible to determine what they're going to do. I don't know who's in charge there. They don't know who's in charge there. So um, it's really tough to look up above the Canadians. And this is all being said days ahead of the lottery, right? Like this could
we
all
don't
be
know. Yeah.
this could be moot on Tuesday night, right? That the Canadians have won the lottery and moved up, or we've moved 2 spots back, which is entirely possible, if not more likely. So I'm not a big fan of packaging that first round pick, the 2 first round picks, just to move up like 3 spots. I'd rather them sit and play it out and see what's going to fall into their lap. One of these good forwards is, I feel positive, is going to fall to them. I just this draft has too many good defensemen. The teams above them need them. I think Montreal is going to end up in a good spot if they stay in 5th.
I'm just looking at the elite prospect rankings right now, assuming that obviously Macklin Celebrini goes first overall. They have Ivan Demidov at second. You still have Lindstrom. You have Aginla. You have Catton. You have Yzerman, Consta Hellenius as well. And then Trevor Connolly, red flags and all, has been one of the big risers at the under 18 tournament here. There's so many defensemen. And like Ian said, like Chicago needs defensemen. Anaheim probably doesn't. Columbus probably could. Who knows what Utah is going to do, which is a very weird thing to say out loud in this. And that picking at 5th, that we know Macklin Celebrini is going first, and then it's just anybody's guess at that point. And that's part of the fun, is there's going to be a forward there. If they take Lindstrom at 2nd overall, there's a chance that Demidov will be there, though I know Pat Verbeek also, like you said, marches to the beat of his own drum. The opportunity is there, but there will be somebody. If they pick Tidge Aginla, I'm actually very happy with that. The more that I learn about him, the happier I would be with it. Or they just get a really sick defenseman and they just up a trade value piece of someone else in their system and make something happen with that. Kent Hughes probably has a plan A, B, C, D through, double Z to figure this out right now. Until the lottery's settled, though, who actually knows?
I would love Tidge Aginla as well, just because we'd probably see his dad in a Canadiens uniform, and that would please my inner child. So
we're going to make so many other Canadian franchises angry.
Yeah.
We had Ty Domi in a Montreal Canadiens jersey. We're going to just move to Alberta now and take Jerome Aginla and put him in a Montreal Canadiens jersey. And personally, I think I deserve that. At least myself personally.
So, Scott, when you were talking about, Kent Hughes has plan A, B, C, D, all the way through Z, there's every single one of those plans involves trading Jordan Harris, and I am not ready for it. There's no scenario I see the Habs keeping him, to be honest.
Yeah.
He feels like the perfect piece because he is so useful to so many things. And this is not to say that I want them to trade Jordan Harris.
No, I don't want them.
But at the same time, there's so many young defensemen that have pushed their way forward in the last year that no one outside of like Matheson, Hudson, Gooley, I think is considered safe from this NHL roster next year. And even then, Matheson is who knows, maybe they get a really good offer. But I think that a lot of that defense there this year really helped them analyze what they have. And no matter what, someone's moving. Someone young will be moving out too, just because only so many spots in the NHL and so many guys who are not waiver eligible, etc. So
someone young and good, that's the thing. It's not just someone young. The Habs are going to be giving up someone good. So my hope is that this front office knows their value and obtains good value for them. All right, so we've got a ton more mailback questions. Actually, this is we just went through one. So I'm going to ask a couple more in our next segment, and that's coming up in just one moment here on Locked On Canadiens. But first, this episode is also brought to you by Monopoly Go. I got to talk about this. Honestly, I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You've already talked about Monopoly, but there's just so much good stuff in this game. It is so fun. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get in terms of those prizes, like unique stickers that you can trade with your friends to complete your albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go download it free now on Google Play or the App Store. All right, we are back with our good friend Ian Boisvert of The Build. Subscribe to The Build, everybody. And we're talking mailbag questions. And there's so much going on, honestly. And I feel like one of the things that we keep hearing about or people keep bringing up is trading, obviously, these big contracts and also PLD. 'Tis the season for buying low on Pierre-Luc Dubois. And it's coming up a lot. And people have really strong opinions about this. And nothing has been said. It's just that he's had a really disappointing season. It's not even a situation where it's where there's smoke, there's fire. He's just been disappointing. So we've got a question from our good friend Mike B, who we haven't heard from in a while. So thank you for getting in touch with us. I heard a Josh Anderson proposal and I wanted to get your thoughts. Here goes. Montreal trades Josh Anderson to LA plus a first round pick plus one of their prospects. LA trades PLD to Montreal. LA retains 50% of salary. So this is what he heard. So he wants to know if there's an attitude issue. And we also all in Montreal were watching Pierre-Luc Dubois like a hawk and expecting him to come to Montreal. So what are your thoughts on this? He has literally had an extremely abysmal season. This is now a situation where he was in Columbus, then he was in Winnipeg, now he's in LA, and it hasn't worked out, but you can't deny that there's talent there, and he's still relatively young. So what are your thoughts?
I just want to say the Canadiens giving up that much to get the player that is more expensive signed longer and seems to be an issue is a non-starter for me. In that, if you want this trade to go through in any way, shape, or form, yes, LA will be retaining on this. Otherwise, no one is going to touch that contract. There is a tweet here that had equal or more points than Pierre-Luc Dubois this year. He had 41 points in 87 games, which would have placed him fifth on the Canadiens, just ahead of Alex Newhook, who had 34 and 55 playing on a lottery team. Nicholas Waugh, Lawson Krause, Warren Fogle, Fabian Zetterlund on the Sharks, Alex Kerfoot, Nick Paul, Brock Faber, a rookie defenseman, Luke Hughes, rookie defenseman, Adam Henrique, who played for the Ducks, Chandler Stevenson, Philip Kurashev, who played for the Blackhawks, Mason Marchment, Kyle Palmieri, and the list goes on and on and on. No, I just, at this point, if you're getting him, if you are Kent Hughes and that he is going, I want to go here, you were looking at LA and going, you're going to take back some of my garbage and you're going to give me that at a discount because I am doing you a favor. 8 years, $8.5 million. And after one season, the rumblings have already started. Normally you get at least a season and a half before we start this. We are less than a year into this deal fully, and it has already begun. Not a good sign.
Yeah. How familiar are you guys with the buyout rules? Can we start that conversation?
So I just saw a tweet about this too, that because he turns 26 on the last day the cup can possibly be awarded, it splits how his buyout can be done. Are they buying out a 1/3 or 2/3 of his contracts?
It's a big difference.
It's a lot. It
Yeah.
is a lot of difference.
If the Stanley Cup goes 6 games instead of 7, does LA decide, you know what, we're gonna just cut bait now? We don't think that this player is a fit. We'll get him at we'll eat the cap hit, but they'll only have to eat a third of it because he's 25. The day he turns 26, it becomes a 2/3 buyout. Now, bringing Pierre Dubois into Montreal in a trade sounds miserable because like the whatever they give up in return is going to be a disaster. However, Pierre Dubois as a free agent coming in off of a buyout where he's already getting money elsewhere might be pretty tantalizing for the Canadiens, honestly. But I don't know. I can't speak to the attitude thing. I mean, I'm not in the room with them. I do think it's a bad look that he's on his third team and it still isn't working out for him. But maybe he just really loves Montreal that much. Maybe that's what it is.
I'm looking at Cap Friendly right now, and this is with the 1/3 buyout ratio as part of this. Laura, how long do you think a Pierre-Luc Dubois buyout would go if you're the LA Kings?
15 years?
14 years.
Wow. Nice
wow.
guess.
There won't be a earth left for that at the end of this. And for LA, that is 1.6, 1.5, 2.5, 3.7, 3.8, 3.8, 2.8, 1.1, 1.1, all the way until 2037, 38. The actual need for a buyout on that is catastrophic.
Yeah.
Because of this contract. And that is just, I cannot believe that we are already at this point. And do I think he can bounce back? Absolutely. But oh my God, where there is smoke on multiple teams, someone has lit a dumpster on fire at this point. Oh my God.
The shock from that has kind of eaten up some of our time because it is truly astounding, really. But I did want to get to 2 questions. So one of them comes from our good friend Charles W. Okay, so this is way out there, and it could be moot by the time Friday rolls around. It's not moot yet, but scenario. Montreal wins the draft lottery, picks Celebrini, instant playoff contender in my opinion. Does Hughes pull off some trades while using some of the prospects to get rid of Galley and maybe Josh Anderson, and try to sign Steven Stamkos to push for the playoffs, like a 3-year deal so that he can be a mentor as well? Right? You said it was way out there, okay? So what are your thoughts?
That's fun. I mean,
I love it.
I do agree with the concept, right? Like, I don't know that that's necessarily how it would play out, but I do agree with the concept that if Montreal wins the lottery and they get Macklin Celebrini,
they got to go for it.
It's foot on the gas. Like we are all gas, no brakes until the whole thing falls apart. I do agree with it in principle. I would love to see Steven Stamkos in Montreal. I still like the concept of Jonathan Marchessault coming in as a free agent is something that, he's a little older, but he's a fun player who could come in and score. But agree with the concept. If it's Celebrini, if Canadians win the lottery, it's time. It's time to start trying to win while those guys are still cheap.
And I think that's it, is that it switches so many things that landing Celebrini, it's like, just like we were saying last year, had they won the lottery and drafted name that I am forgetting off, Connor Bedard, Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
wow. Yeah, that guy. It changes the entire complexity of where this team is at currently, in that we are suddenly much deeper. We can afford to be bold with our moves here. We have guys on rookie contracts. We can move things around to make things happen. And that's where Kent Hughes thrives. He's gotten 2 first-round picks for the same player in 2 separate years. He's traded Jeff Petrie twice and won both trades twice. It is, when it comes to getting creative, Kent Hughes is exactly the guy I want with this kind of thing here. I love the creativity, and I know we have one other question left that I put in the side there, so I don't want to take up too much more time on that.
Yes, and I want to thank Charles for the question, because I love that. You know what? Like, this is the kind of thing where we love talking about it. And then finally, our question. We have brought this up before, but I did want to get your thoughts on it now. Patrik Laine in Montreal, and who would you give up for him?
That's a fun one because I love the player. I really do like Patrik Laine. He's going through a really tough situation right now, which makes it makes it tough to think about moving him if you're Columbus.
Yeah.
With that said, I'd be willing to give up like a middling prospect for him. I don't know that Columbus is really, again, until they get their general manager, it's tough to tell like what
They
they
could
would be
do.
looking for. Like if someone comes in and goes, you know what, we need to do what Chicago did, and we're just going to fire sale everybody, you could probably get Patrik Laine at a pretty good deal. But if not, then you're probably paying a pretty premium price for a guy like that. He still has that second overall shine to him, even though it's been a little bit and he's on his second team and he suffered with injuries. But Columbus has been using him in incredibly stupid ways. They played him as a center this year. Like, why did they do that? Like, I feel bad for any good players that are on that team because I just feel like they don't know what they're doing. Anyway, that's a different story. Yeah, I'd be interested in the player for a good price. But I wouldn't overpay for a Patrik Laine unless the Canadiens determined he was the missing piece on a championship team.
Everything about this screams change of scenery. Like first year in Winnipeg, 64 points in 73 games. Good. 44 goals is next year, 70 points, 50 points in 82 games. He was a 30-20 player. 28 and 35 after that, 63 points in 68 games. 21 points in his first 45 games in Columbus, who were devastated by injury. And I think that was still the Torts Blue Jackets at the time. 56 points in 56 games, 52 and 55 last year, 9 and 18 this year before he was injured, then went to join player assistance. This is a guy that with the proper, and I don't want to say nurturing and seem like I am trying to speak down about him, but someone who has played now for John Tortorella, Pascal Vincent, who clearly is just not it, considering I think they also are going to fire him. And Paul Maurice before. Maurice might have been the best coach that he's had, and that's not a good sign for things.
No kidding, yeah.
Which I get that, yeah, Paul Maurice is playing in Florida, and they just went to the Cup final, but I could do a whole rant about that another time. It screams out like, hey, this is a player in need of a new opportunity. If they're going to do that in Montreal again, you have to remove Josh Anderson from this team, because if you add Laine to Anderson, you are putting two potentially devastating defensive black holes in your lineup that you have to build around. And unless Laine can get that goal scoring back, I'm not sure that is worthwhile. I think there's the opportunity that in terms of buying low, Columbus might do that because, like Ian said, it depends on who the GM is. If the GM thinks he can fix them and support him with a proper center and a system, great. If not, somebody's probably going to get him low. He's going to be a hell of a power play weapon, and they're probably going to be happier for it afterwards.
Ian, I want to thank you for joining us. And can you please tell our lovely listeners where they can find you and your work?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Maybe It's Ian. The build is available in most places you find podcasts. I'm hoping, I haven't wrapped on this season yet, come to think of it, but I have a script. I'm ready to go. I just can't find the time to do it. So expect that soon. And then I'll be back next week for the draft lottery as well.
Yay. And as for us, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Please subscribe. Please tell your friends. Please follow us on social media. We are at LO_Canadiens. Scott is at Scott Betla. I am at The Active Stick. I have a very special coming up, very special guest coming up on the Monday episode. So please tune in, and I will see you next week.